Hey everyone, it's Jerry here, ServiceNow Product Owner, and I've got the wonderful Scott Carver, also another product owner, obviously from Rolls-Royce. So a very big welcome to Scott, and I wanted really to do this recording with Scott because he's done a really great, fantastic app using Creator Studio. So there's a bit of a challenge going on now, isn't there, Scott?
There is, and I think it's always good to see those call to arms, people to get out there and play with the platform, because a bit like Lego, you can create so much stuff with it, and it's great to see the inventive ways people can use ServiceNow to achieve their business goals. So good to get in there and get hands-on, and rather than just be platform owner, or can be a dev for a day.
Yeah, let's do it. And you know what, Scott, I'm going to probably get your screen up and you can show us what you've created. So I'm really excited to see that.
So I've seen loads of examples of these done over the past couple of weeks, and I've seen some really great use cases of things like room booking apps, or saw one the other day about reporting missing people that I thought was really cool. But I learn by doing, and I learn when something is fun. Like if I can make it something silly or something a little bit unusual, it sticks better in my mind and I find it more fun. So I've created an app called Ice Creams Now, playing on the ServiceNow name. And the purpose of the Ice Creams Now app was to allow people in the ServiceNow ecosystem to buy ServiceNow themed ice creams. Now I've used the Creator Studio to achieve this. I've just followed all of the on-platform guidance to do this, and it was my first proper time using this. I've used parts of Flow Design and other parts of App Engine before, but this was my first time really using Creator Studio, and it's so easy. Honestly, if I can do it, then gosh, anybody can. So yeah, we've got nod to Damien Davis, bit of a nod there into Bill, the great man himself, and I had to give a tribute somewhere to Chuck. I mean, we're going to miss him so much in the community, so I had to make sure there's some kind of immortalization of the great man himself in whatever I created here. So you can order any one of those ServiceNow branded ice creams, really basic record producer, pick from the options, again, just using all of the guidance in here of how to create these very simple variables. And a bit of a nod to the challenge itself to say, look, if I can do this and anyone else can do this, so give it a go. So designed the record producer, then went into the automations and just created a very simple flow for, again, this imaginary ServiceNow ice cream truck, where once that item has been requested, it has to be accepted into the ice cream truck. The manager's there saying, can we actually take this order on? So there's an approval step in here, and again, all of this just following the interactive guide. A little bit of trial and error, but once you've done one, you've generally cracked it. So there's an approval flow right at the beginning. You've then got to check to see whether someone has allergies, because on the form there's a field that says, have you got any allergy requirements, which then branches out into two different pathways. If you have allergies, there's a fulfillment team that are working in a space and working with ingredients that are free from allergens, and then an alternate route for those who have no further dietary requirements, where all of this then routes to different people, create some tasks for them to complete, and at the end of that flow, when the tasks have been completed, there's a QA approval step. When that's been approved by the appropriate person, it goes to a delivery team, and then they give the ice cream to the very happy recipient at the end of that flow. So when you look at it in the portal, again, looks great. Just designed it all in Creator Studio. It looks wonderful when you come and view it in here. Nice and easy. Again, all the little options are in here to pick from. So let's have a Washington Whippy in this case, the outgoing release of Washington. We'll say we have we have got some allergies in this case, and I can say when I want it. Now, it would be good this afternoon to have an ice cream, in fairness, so let's just go for a little bit in the future today, and I'll tick on my final mandatory field. And when I submit this, I've done no other bells and whistles around things like notifications and emails to requesters or formatting any of this stuff, just gone purely for the basic stuff. But what it does is it will create a ticket in the back end now. So looking at this from workspace point of view, we'll now see I've got a new task in here with my parent action in here, and it's created the approval action in here, which if I open up the approval task, we should see that it's gone to the ice cream truck management team. So we should see here, there we go, there's the team that would approve it. I think it does a couple of other approvals behind the scenes to individuals. I think I did a few things that are a little bit unusual with this, because I guess when I go back to this step now, you'll see that's closed, but it hasn't actually gone to the next step. And I think when I built the approvals, it actually created individual approvals as well. So if I go to related records now, you'll see I've got my group approvals being done, but actually I've got two individual approvers as well. So that was a learning experience. Figured out that you can do group and individual approvers as well. So if I now go in and approve these items here, just flick those over to be approved. I've got sysadmin power, so I can be anybody who I want to, which is awesome. Wish it was that way in real life. And what I should now see is if I go back up to the list view and refresh this, you should now see, there we go, I've now got a step that's being created. So on the back of that approval being done, it's now created a child task within the parent task that's now been assigned to the allergen-free fulfillment team for them to complete. And again, when they now go in there and complete their step, just tick it through and then just refresh my workspace, I should then see another approval task generator that's gone to the team for approval. So you can see it goes through that flow, which again, just starting off from what I'd built in the Creator Studio. Again, when you see it and you draw it on here, it's hard to visualize, is it going to work at the first attempt, but a little bit of trial and error and back and forth, and before you know it, you're seeing that flow unfold before your eyes, which again, I'm not a certified admin, I'm not a technical specialist, I have no training on how to build officially in ServiceNow, but I can figure that out myself, which if I can figure that out, I'm sure there's so many people out there can, that there's loads more you can do behind this. You can dip out into your edit your record producers, bang UI policies onto your catalog item, but to just build the bare bones of a flow from a request item through to fulfillment, literally you can spin this up in no time. That took me probably the best part of an hour, maybe a bit long with the bells and whistles on top in terms of some of the formatting, but it's so easy to use some of this that it's a really good entry point into how to build things with App Engine. So I've been really impressed with it.
That's really great, Scott, and I think thank you so much for showing what you've built. And like I said, if you can do it, then anyone can build that. But like you said, it's all about understanding, kind of that background and context of what you're trying to build or what app you're trying to establish some of those business problems. But just a few questions from me, and it's really wonderful to see, really creative actually, Scott. Love the idea of an ice cream. I do want an ice cream now, actually. So yes, I'll go onto your site and order one as well. So, but
there's a business venture in there somewhere. I think I could certainly pitch the idea. If anyone from ServiceNow is listening, then I'd happily get one of these set up.
I think what we need, though, World Forum is happening in 2 weeks' time in London. Maybe we need an ice cream van, and we can at least have some of those recipes or those ice creams that you've got available to order.
Absolutely.
But anyway, maybe I'll see you later for next year.
Definitely.
But yeah, Scott, just a few questions from me really. Is how easy did you find it? From, like you said, you're not a certified system administrator. You haven't got much. Okay, you probably got some technical experience, but not as much as probably what the devs. And but if you think about a business owner or business process owner, what's your thoughts on how easy for them to use?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely a ceiling to what you can do and where you can get to with Creator Studio. So I think I've dabbled around with App Engine before. I've had a go at creating apps through more conventional ways, going to the individual screens, going creating record producers, going into Flow Designer and building parts individually. But what it gives you is a really easy entry point for people that don't understand the platform. So again, traditionally we would build record producers using creating catalog items or going to create record producer, and you'd use the old school view or go and use UI builder. But this is such a nice, clean, simple interface that it's pretty straightforward what all of these things do, that if you are just building something fairly simple, it is as easy as just click and drag, and then when you drag it in, you've got then the scope to then just change a few bits of functionality in here, that if you're looking for a way to get stakeholders on board and maybe get them to help with some of the design process, something like this is quite safe to give away. They can't really break it, and in this design they won't really get stuck because it is quite straightforward. I think where it gets more difficult is where I've got stakeholders that would say, how do I make this form flow so that when you fill out field 1, field 2 appears, and there's branching pathways in there. They can't do any of that from in here, and that's probably a good thing, because you wouldn't want them trying to set up UI policies and create all that in here, because it would be really confusing. But likewise with the automation bit, I think in some ways it's good to go through this process with somebody. Maybe if you're sat with a stakeholder and walking through the steps with them, and you have somebody who kind of understands the flow, it would be a lot easier. I think you have to do a little bit of trial and error with this. I mean, some of the bits in here took me a couple of attempts to figure out how do I manage that flow, that when one task finishes, what are the conditions for it to then trigger the next? So when I first created this, the item would open, the flow would start, and it would go from A to B. I'm like, why has nothing worked? Or why have all the steps created at once? Because I hadn't created those kind of conditions to say, don't do this until that has been complete. So you have to have that kind of logical mindset where you're going through it step by step. And it's, if you've written macros before, or you've done kind of if-when logic before, it makes quite a lot of sense. But even then, there's only so far you can go. And I think it's probably built that way for a reason. Like if you go and create another step in here, you've got either a decision or an activity where you only have a handful of options. It's either get an approval, give it to a person to work on it, or create a task for the playbook. So again, for the really basic catalog item creation, or even just getting the bones of a structure, this is great. But then I found myself wanting to do more on top. I'm like, okay, how do I trigger my notifications? How do I go and build my UI policies? How do I go and do the other bits and pieces that add and elevate the experience? That's probably not the point of this. It's about getting that initial flow in place. But ease, generally, very easy. Figured it out in about an hour's time. So yeah, big fan.
Oh, thanks, Scott, for sharing that. Thanks for sharing your experience. And I think from my perspective, if I was looking from a business viewpoint of, I really want to see what that form looks like. I really want to see what that flow looks like, and really kind of keep it simple. And if you can create that, in under 40 minutes or under an hour, and really kind of show that true value of, right, if we've got the power, the capability to be able to create an app in that time, well, what could we do in half a day? What could we do in a day? And again, building up upon some of the complexities. Again, we all know in a business they want, they want something that, could it do this? Could it do that? And soon enough, it will build up a bit more. All right, we might need some, UI policies or business rules. We might need add-in or notifications to be set up. But again, you've got like I say, a skeleton framework of an app that you can build, demonstrate to the business, and seeing that value to say, look, if you've got all these ideas, this is what it could look like, rather than having a conversation, doing some requirements gathering. And for me, people like to see the thing in a digital app or a physical thing before they start thinking, what, I might change the way I think now. I might change that process design, and we might just, again, work in collaboration and really kind of get to the point where, we're actually going to make an app that's really useful for our customers to use and gives a better experience. But also the people that fill in those processes or fulfilling those tasks, you could get their feedback on it and also further improve their experience as well.
Yeah, you make some really good points there about the visual experience as well. We have a process at the moment where someone will fill out an Excel form to say, what fields do you need? What will the form look like? And it's things like they'll give you a list of variables, but it's only when you start to create it at the moment when they can physically see the flow and go, but that field doesn't work there. That should go further down. That should be after that part. And that's in long text format. And multi-line text is probably the wrong thing for us. We need a yes/no field, or we need to have a multiple choice field. That I think giving people the ability to see that and work through that with you in real time. It's almost like your initial design of a form, because you aren't touching the real technical parts of form design. You're just talking about content and what kind of information you've got to collect. There's so much more you can do with form elements if you go and build it through UI Builder, or go and build through creating a new record producer. But these are the core bits. If someone's trying to give you an idea of what their app needs to do or what their forms need to collect, this is pretty much all you really need. And if you get the bare bones of it down, then you can start to then brainstorm and say, right then, so you want to do some more dynamic interaction where this policy drives this and this makes that form visible. You can do all of that afterwards, because sometimes just getting to the point of how it looks, what it contains, what it does, that can be the hardest part. That if you can do the real config work afterwards, when you've really nailed down the need and what's going to happen with that journey, I think that's where this really comes into its own. Let's work on the input and then think about the flow. Then we'll go and take it away as a team and do all the real technical nuts and bolts behind the scenes. That, again, if in a citizen dev world, these first two bits here around forms and automation is probably enough. You could give them the power to do some of that themselves and be fairly safe. So now you've got the review functionality in here as well. And then you could almost have that control and the governance behind it to say, right, but then we'll make all the real WYSI stuff happen. We'll look at the routing and the logic, because just imagine some teams in here trying to build this out and just having a complete like mind blown. Yeah, and I think that's just for me. This is where I say if you ask someone to write you a process or build you this process within the platform itself, again having the really basic stuff in here, it's really good to give someone the power to visualize that on here. I know there's also a board view here as well, but this is a much cleaner view, I think, to see how it works. That it gives you the core parts of the journey: who touches it, who is involved, who has to approve it, who does the action. Outside of that, for a stakeholder or for a service owner, that's all they probably need to understand. All the mechanics of how those approvals get around and how they sequence and who works on them, or any other flows around sending employee notifications or updating other parts of the system. They don't need to see all of that. So this whole Creator Studio could be a good vehicle to at least deal with that first like 20, 30, 40% of the build work, where it's still in that kind of ideation phase. How do I want it to look? How could it flow? And even seeing some of this, people might think, hang on a minute, why have we got two parallel flows? It's all done by the same team. Let's just do it through one flow instead. That only by going through that process and physically mapping it out can you really get an appreciation for that. And I know today, without using tools like this, it's hard for people to visualize some of that. All they see is a form, or they see a ticket that lands in one of their queues. Having this way to visualize with a stakeholder, I think will make requirement capturing and conversations about the design of something so much easier, where you could bring end users in, you could bring agents into the process, you can bring service owners and stakeholders into the process too, where they can all see what's happening and think, is this working for us? Is this going to give us the outcomes that we need? That if you just use the composite parts on their own, you'd struggle to give that kind of picture. So yeah, it's a really powerful bit of kit. Really impressed with it.
I agree, Scott. I think, given the fact that, if you work with, kind of many different stakeholders, sometimes those stakeholders might be quite familiar with that particular process. But when you, let's say, speak to another stakeholder that might not have, maybe least experience, I think having this visual diagram that you're showing on screen gives that consistency in terms of, this is what we do in, when we build out a flow, build out a process. So again, it gives a good basic kind of framework to work towards. Again, then that kind of, for me, reduces that time when you're doing, having requirements discussions or conversations with those stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not without, there's definitely room for improvement. I think there's always things that you could do better with this. That I say that the inner developer inside me trying to get out was thinking, wouldn't it be great to have more options in here? That again, maybe there's something where when you come to create a new step in some of these, if there was more options in here, that it is levels of this where there's Creator Studio for non-technical people to help map something out, but maybe there's almost then the Creator Studio Pro, which then allows you to do more than this and build more things into it. And again, that might be my lack of understanding of some of the broader bits of configuration, but I found myself getting to a point and thinking, I would love to do more here. I would love to build in the notifications or build in this or build in that, but I'm probably going beyond the initial use case of what was here. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, really good kit.
I mean, it's great feedback, Scott. Definitely great feedback, and I'm sure, hopefully the solutions team in Creator Studio will be able to look at this and again, kind of input into that as well. So really happy to see what they've got on their roadmap, and excited to see what Creator Studio can do more. So I think what we'll do, we'll just wrap it up and maybe some free takeaways.
I think for me, it'd just be get out there and play. I've encouraged all of my team to have a go at doing this, and I've got a mix of technical and non-technical roles that span a different range of duties. But I think with everything with the ServiceNow world, the more you can get into it and have a go and have a play, the more it becomes real, and you start to get what is possible and what can be achieved. And I think it just shows the power of the platform, two, how easy it's going to become. At World Forum, there's so much stuff about Gen AI, which will take this to an entirely different level. I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the next couple of weeks. But I just think have a go, just have a play, dive in, give it a go. You do get a free mug if you do it before the end of the first week of October, which is definitely an incentive to give it a go as well. But again, I'm a practical learner. By doing this, honestly, my understanding of flow and how it all pieces together has just gone up another level. And I think the more we can use tools like this with stakeholders, like I'm going to use this with my boss and show him what I've built, because it'll help him to understand. And I'm sure if he was watching this, which he won't be because he doesn't follow this kind of stuff, if he saw this, he'd think, I could have a go at doing that. I could build it as well. But he's saying with great power comes great responsibility. But I think the more people that understand the process we go through or the steps that we take and see how it can happen, the better. The only caveat I put behind all of that is people might see this and think, well, if it's that easy, we can just build stuff in 2 minutes. Like, we'll go and create 50 record producers tomorrow and build a new app, which is also a dangerous perception. But I think it just showcases the power of what ServiceNow can bring to improving a service and digitizing how work flows.
Thank you very much, Scott, and I really, really appreciate your time for showcasing this. And yeah, let us know. I think everyone let Scott know what they think about his app, and we'll look forward to seeing more of Scott in the future. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having me, Jerry. Appreciate it.